So we're gonna just do a little bit of background. Rabbi Akiva was born in 50 CE. Okay, the temple was still built, was still extant. There's some source sheets over here, David. And it was destroyed in what year? 70 CE. So he saw the destruction of the temple. He saw, and Rabbi Akiva suffered a tragic death at the hand of the Romans. It's destruction of the second temple. So the first temple's destruction appears in the Tanakh. Second temple appears in the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva was a Talmudic rabbi. He was one of the authors of his name appears like 1,000 times in the Talmud. He's one of the biggest rabbis in our tradition. Let's see if there's any other good information here that could be helpful. His students, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was his student. Rabbi Meir. Okay, these are Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We know him from Lag BaOmer. Let's see if there's any other good information here. This is Rabbi Akiva. This is what he looked like. No, I'm just joking. I don't know.
Rendering.
So when we're learning stories about Rabbi Akiva, we're basically learning about this time period over here. We're in the Tanaim period. These are all the time periods of different rabbinic like groups. So we have the Zukot, we have the Tanaim, the Amoraim. These two and these three are basically the Talmud. It takes place in this period. The Mishnah and the Talmud, which is the oral tradition. And then we get into later authorities, the Rishonim, which is the Rambam, Rashi, Achronim, which is Rabbi Yosef Karo, 1500s and on. So we're basically in this time period, in the Tanaim period, the very beginning of them. The Zukot was Hillel. This time period we're in. He's in Israel. The Romans are ruling at the time, and we're going to see that he's going to have some brush-ups with them, and sadly, a tragic death due to the Romans. So, is that helpful? Any other? Okay. So, if you have any questions, like just on some framing, I think I sometimes just jump right in. So, let me know. I'll walk it back a little bit. Okay. So. Let's see anything else here. Rabbi Akiva collected a lot of the oral traditions. Until this rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, all the oral tradition was not written down. It was oral. That's why it's called oral tradition. So we had the Bible, the Bible. We didn't have the oral tradition was not written down. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi collected all the sayings into a book which he called the Mishnah. Some say that Rabbi Akiva started that process. He started to collect all the sayings, but they were all oral. We were afraid at one point that they get lost. So they ended up putting in a book. That's how the Talmud emerged. Rabbi Akiva was very central in those discussions that appear in the Mishnah, because Rabbi Yehuda Nasi comes after him and he collects his statements, Rabbi Yeshua's statements, Rabban Gamliel. So that's a little bit on that. Okay. So here's a few links. This is a nice link if you get a chance to take this. Why Rabbi Akiva is my hero. It's from Aish Torah. It brings I think 12 reasons why Rabbi Akiva is awesome, and why it can be relevant for our lives. So it's like it's very easy to read, and it's quick. This is here they talk about comparing Rabbi Akiva's learning style to Rabbi Ishmael. It's his style, and basically Abraham Joshua Heschel was a theologian, and from a few decades ago. He spoke a lot about that. So you can just see a summary of that. Okay, so that's and this one is basically talking about Jewish women women in Jewish history. We're going to see that's going to be relevant for us in our class today. Next week it'll be very relevant for us because we're going to talk about Bruria. Anybody heard of her? She was a woman rabbi, like a woman sage in the time of the Tanaim, this time period, and she was extremely brilliant. And there's a lot of stories connected to her. We're going to learn that next week, how well it is. So it's going to be interesting as well. All right, so we're going to start with some Pirkei Avot teachings. Pirkei Avot, again, is one of the books of the Mishnah, so from that time period as well. They're the sayings, the ethical sayings of our rabbis. So Rabbi Akiva appears in them because he's going to appear in all the Tanaitic works because he's one of our central rabbis from all the generations. We're going to see why he's so special as we go along. All right, so here's some statements. Just I think what I want to do with this is kind of I did this with Hill. I did this with Hill last week. Let's just think about what stands out from these statements? What we can gather about his personality, about his mind, about his philosophy from them. So the first one is, these are 4 Mishnahs in a row. I'm on page 23. Rabbi Akiva says, joking and lightheartedness acclimate towards promiscuity. Tradition is safeguarding fence around the Torah. So the more tradition you have, the more you observe the tradition, the better you'll be able to keep the Torah. So sometimes you do certain things out of tradition in order to maintain the Torah so it doesn't get lost. Tithes are a safeguarding fence around wealth. If you give tzedakah, it will enable you to have more money or more blessing in your money. Vows are a safeguarding fence around abstinence. A safeguarding fence around wisdom is silence. Okay, so that's going to stand out in Rabbi Akiva's life because he spent. We're going to see he spent 40 years as an ignoramus. Okay, so it's never too late. He did not even know to do the alphabet. He might not even have known how to read. He didn't know how to read Hebrew until age 40. Okay, so the tradition, as the tradition tells us, age 40 he started. And for 40 years he learned, and for 40 years he influenced, but apparently he also influenced during his first 40 years as well. So he was very quiet for a while, and he was able to absorb all the knowledge.
He was 120 when he was.
Yeah, when he was killed, we brought that last week. There are a few sages who lived to 120. Hillel was one of them, Rabbi Akiva was one of them. I think these two individuals are connected. If you remember last week, Hillel we spoke about, he was extremely kind and generous person. And I spoke about what led to, there was something in the background that led to that. I spoke about how he had a good self-image, how he had a strong sense of self that enabled him to have enough to give to other people. So Rabbi Akiva also has some things that led him to become the person he is. We're going to talk about that in this question. That could be a connection. All right. So here we just see, I think, a certain, he's a conservative person. He wants to maintain things, conserve them, keep them in place, keep them in order. So I think we see that in that Mishnah. This is a Mishnah I want to kind of focus on. Let me just see if I can find anybody else in. Oh, sure. Okay. I think we're good. Interesting. Let me actually. Oh, okay, cool. All right, everybody's on. Okay. Okay. So this Mishnah is going to be important for us. This is a nice Mishnah. So it says like this. All these are statements that were, like when they say he used to say, this is like some of his main sayings. Okay, so we get a sense from these sayings, that's why I'm bringing them, of his personality. This saying is, beloved are humans, for they were created in the image of God. All humans, not just Jews, all humans were created in the image of God. How do I know that? The Torah says so. If Adam and Eve were created in the image of God, they're the first humans, according to the Torah. So we all are created in the image of God. Especially beloved are those to whom it's made known that they have been created in the image of God. So if you know, that's even better. Okay. So what does that mean? What does that mean actually?
Knowledge.
So why is it especially beloved if you have knowledge of it?
Because you are a soul, and your soul is on loan to God Almighty.
So why is it important that I know it?
Well, it's important to know if you're going to have a relationship with Hashem.
Correct.
I'd say it's essential.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So that you act godly.
Mm-hmm. So
aspire.
You do have this divine image, but if you don't know about it, you won't be able to bring it out. You won't be able to act on it. That's
That's essentially what I'm going to say. That I am holy, so be like me.
Same.
Are you asking the beloved part?
Go for it.
Okay. Because to me, to emphasize the beloved part is this whole idea of your acting in the image of God and being in the image of God is a way to be loved at its highest level.
I like that. So if you know it, then you can be it, and then you experience that divine love.
Right, and that will then die. Like
Yeah. That's nice. So I just want you to know, so I was speaking at Chazan Albrecht before the class today, And he's like, "Oh, speaking about Rabbi Akiva, how many classes are you giving Rabbi Akiva?" So I'm just letting you know, like we're literally like we're just in one Mishnah. There's so many. I could teach this for like a few hours. Okay, so I'm gonna try my best. We're gonna have to. I imagine at one point I'm gonna start going at turbo speed, but I don't. Right now I'm not there. Okay, but there's so many good things. Like this is. So the next one is beloved are Israel, Am Yisrael, but they were called children to the all present. Especially beloved are those who has made known that they are children to all present. So there's an element of we're all in the image of God. Am Yisrael is considered banim, children. It's a more intimate connection. God gave us the Torah. We have access to God through the Torah, through our tradition. A child can knock on their parents' door at most hours of the night or sometimes, and well, anyway, but you have access to your parents. I'm not bringing my experiences into this. Okay, beloved are Israel, and that a precious vessel the Torah was given to them. Especially beloved are those who has made known that this the desire instrument. The Torah was given to us. If we know that we got the Torah and that we have such a blessing, that's even better. What I like about this Mishnah, we're going to see this is important thing with Rabbi Akiva is like there's what's there, and then there's what's the manifestation of what's there. There's the image, and there's the bringing out of the image. There's the knowing your children to Hashem, and then becoming that. So we're going to see that that's going to be very important. That's why I put it in like a box. All right, here's another statement. Everything is foreseen, and free will is given. Whoa, Rabbi Akiva, easy there. Everything is God knows everything, but we still have free will. How do you make sense of that? All right, we're not going to that. That's a whole class in itself as well.
Yeah.
But what it says, Rabbi Akiva is dealing with these deep things. He's not just into conserving our tradition. He's not just into seeing the depths of things, but he's not just like seeing us manifesting our essence. He's also talking about philosophical ideas. He's talking about free will and God's knowledge. So he's dealing with very lofty things. If you remember in our first class, you also mentioned Rabbi Akiva. He went into the orchard, and he was the only one who survived. So experience. So Rabbi Akiva is dealing with deep things, big things, and he's very spiritual. We're going to see.
That's very logical to me, Rabbi. Number
It's logical.
15. Very logical to me. Everything is foreseen and free will is given. With the goodness of the world is judged. You can go back to Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of between good and evil, and Hashem said, "Okay, well now you know. I'm going to give you free will because now you got to repair the world, and you're going to know what goodness is, and you're going to know what evil is, and you make the choice." And we're still living it to this very day.
Correct. So there's many ways to reconcile those two statements. Some say that God knows what's going to happen. God can see things, but we have the choice to like establish what's going to happen. God like knows overall. Some say that God it's a contradiction. It's a paradox. God, infinite knowledge, knows everything. We still have free will. But I'm actually not going to go so deep into that. I actually wrote part of my dissertation on that. Go check it out. All right.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
But it's the way the world is as meshuggah as it is right now. It's good for the Yidden to believe that Hashem judges the world with goodness.
Correct.
Important.
And I do think it's also helpful for us to believe that that God's behind everything. Like everything's foreseen. Like God's behind the word too.
Absolutely.
We say that in Tefillah every morning, and you'll say, or Bala Milchamot, Zoreat Tzadakot Matzmiach. God's Baal. God's in charge of this. God's overseeing the war. God knows what's happening in the wars. That could be a comforting idea. This idea that God's is in charge. God knows what's happening. That can be comforting. All right. Last thing is this Mishnah, which I'm not going to go deep into, but basically he's seeing the world as almost like a business relationship. Everything is given as collateral, and that is over all life. The shop is open, the shopkeeper grants credit, and the accounting ledger is open. The hand writes, and everyone who wants to borrow can come and borrow. And the collectors go constantly on their daily rounds and exact payment from man with his knowledge or without his knowledge. They have that upon which to rely, and the judgment is true judgment. Everything is prepared for the feast. It's kind of like a cryptic Mishnah in my in the book I wrote on Pirkei Avot. I explained it like we all have our talents that we need to bring to the world, and they're on loan. And God gives us these blessings, like we go to a store, there's all these good things. God gives us good things. They're on loan. We have to use them to make the world a better place. If we don't, God will send out people to make sure that we do. God will send out creditors to say, I gave you this as a loan for you to use to make the world better. Make sure you use it. That I explained it that way. But you see here that he also believes in judgment and reward and punishment, or some sort of attribute, some sort of response to our actions from above. Okay, but I just want to kind of get you a feel for his personality. We see here faith. We see he's into tradition. We see he's very deep. He's into bringing out our inner essence. Okay, good. Let's get into some story. Okay, this is a great story, and I'll tell you a story about this story, a very quick one. I told this story to a very captive audience, even more captive than you. I told the story when I worked in a jail in New York, in Rikers Island.
That's a captive audience.
That's very captive audience. Rabbi Walber told that joke. I'm just borrowing it, but I told this story to inmates, and no, I'm telling you the honest truth. I was telling the story to like 10 inmates one Rosh Hashanah afternoon, and one of them started crying when I told the story. So I'll tell you why. I have to read the story. Okay, this is an awesome story. And so our source sheet's breaking up into a few parts: faith, Torah. Then the third part is going to be what's the third part? From his moral evolution, then his connection with his wife. We're gonna see that we're at a time all together. Okay. So right now we're in his faith. Rabbi Akiva's faith was immense. One of the stronger one of the people with the stronger faith in our tradition. Okay, here's where it began for Rabbi Akiva. Up to the age of 40, he had not yet studied a thing. Okay, 40 years old, doesn't know anything about our tradition. He was a shepherd. Okay, he's a simple man, seemingly. And one time, he was standing by the mouth of a well in Lida. He inquired, who hollowed out the stone? So he was sitting by like a brook, by a well, and he saw a stone. He looked at the stone, it was engraved. It had like an indention on the stone. And he asked the question, who made the stone look so beautiful? And the answer was, water is falling upon it day by day. A drop at a time, the water keeps keeps dropping onto the stone, and it changes the shape of the stone. So at that point, something clicked for him. I think this story is connected to another story, so we'll come back to that. But I think this story is connected to like his story with his wife. We'll connect them later. But for now, this is the story of how something clicked for him. He saw that the stone could change, so he too could change a little bit at a time. His heart was like stone. And if he learned Torah a little bit, a drop, he came to Minyan one day, he learned a little Mishnah, he came to Rabbi Yoga's class, he did Tehillah, and a little bit, something can change. Something can change inside of you. I saw this a lot. I went to a Baal Tshuva yeshiva in Israel. Baal Tshuva means people are newly religious. I saw people come from India with long hair, slowly learn a little bit more Torah, and they became like a little bit more learned, and they became more connected to things. I saw a lot of changes in people over the 3 years I was in that yeshiva, including myself. I also came there kind of like wild, and I was able to kind of get on track and find purpose a step at a time. This is the idea. When I told the story in the jail, this gentleman in the back, in the 60s, he started crying. I would have never thought that he'd like cry in that setting, because he looked really like he's been through a lot. That's what he shared. He's like, this story made me believe that I can like change, because I'm just in and out of these jails all the time. And this like woke something up inside of me, this story. This is what happened to Rabbi Akiva. It woke up inside of him. He goes, is my mind harder than this stone? I will go and study at least one section of Torah. He went directly to a schoolhouse. He and his son began reading from a child's tablet. This is not like an iPad. This is it's a translation.
The iPad of the day.
I don't know what the Hebrew is, but it's like a scroll or whatever. Rabbi Akiva took hold of one end of the tablet, and his son took the other hand. The teacher wrote down Aleph and Bet for him, and he learned them. Aleph to Top, he learned them. The book of Leviticus, he learned it. He went on studying until he learned the whole Torah. Okay, so it's a very inspiring story. It's never too late, a step at a time, and we too can change if we allow ourselves to be open, letting the Torah work through us. And so that's a great story about his beginning. All right, so here's a classic story with Rabbi Akiva. Anybody heard the story with the rooster and the lamp and the rooster and the lamp and the
Donkey.
donkey? Yeah, correct. Who's heard the story before? Okay, so if you haven't, I'm happy that I can introduce it to you for the first time. I love this story. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva used to say, you should always say everything that happens is for the good. Whoa, that's such an extreme statement. It's very difficult for some people to say everything is for the good. So it's not that everything is good, but rather everything that God does, God has a plan and God has a greater, it's not like everything's going to feel comfortable, but we understand that there's a plan behind things. So Rabbi Akiva believed that very strongly. He might have gotten that lesson from his rabbi, Nachum Ish Gamzu, which is also a person who had great faith. What?
Gamzu
Gamzu Latova. He used to say, this is also for the best. Okay. It's a good source. All right. Which disc is that? No, it's joking. All right, so you should always say, whatever the all merciful done is for the good. So here's the example. Here's the case. Rabbi Akiva this is a good story, like to touch kids to or grandkids. So he was once going along the road. He came to a certain town. He looked for lodgings, but no one wanted him. So he get to a town. Went to all the hotels, the motels. Nobody had space for him. And he was traveling, but he obviously wanted a place to stay. But he said everything God does is for the best. Everything God does for the best. So he went and spent the night in an open field. Okay, that's the only place he could stay because there was no room in the lodging. So he had with him a rooster, a donkey, and a lamb. Okay, what was the purpose of that? The rooster was to what? You need an alarm clock. He didn't have a smartphone to have all these together, like a flashlight and an alarm in your phone. The rooster was to wake him up, I guess. The lamp was to help him see in the night, and the donkey was to help him travel. Okay, so he's sitting in the field with these three items. A gust of wind came and blew out the lamp. A weasel came and ate the rooster. A lion came and ate the donkey that he bought for 2 zuzi. No, anyway, but this sounds familiar. But so imagine Rabbi Akiva gets to a town. I would imagine he's an important rabbi at this point. I mean, I imagine the story's being told about him as a rabbi because he used to have this statement. So he's a rabbi, no space for him. So he goes and sleeps out in the field. He has a few things with him. They all get stolen. One gets devoured, etc. He has nothing. So you haven't seen him bring matches, I guess, either. But so he has nothing. But he says everything that God does is for the best. Okay. So it turns out the next day, some bandits came that night and carried off inhabitants of the town. He said to them, "Did I not say to you, whatever the all merciful does is for the best?" That night, some marauders came to the town and they caused trouble. Now, if he would have had his lamp or his donkey or his rooster, he would have been discovered. It turns out he was spared. Now, this doesn't always work out perfectly for us in our lives, okay? It's not always like everything works out miraculously like that. The idea is that it's like a bigger plan. There's a bigger plan. We have to look deeper. Like there's another layer to things. Sometimes we don't understand what's happening. And so, yeah.
Well, so part of the point was that he was refused lodging in the town.
Yeah.
And had he been given
Exactly,
lodging in the
exactly.
town,
And if he refused lodging, he had a lamp, or he had this donkey that's making noise, something would have happened. They would have been discovered. Okay, so that's a classic story with Rabbi Akiva. I like this story just because I don't believe that faith in God means that everything's going to happen perfect for you. But I do believe that it's a high level to be able to say that there's a plan. I don't understand it, but I trust that God is a plan overall. I don't always understand it.
Rabbi, I would for me, just adds, I'm a firm believer, my wife should have said there are no coincidences. So even the story, Baruch Hashem, he didn't get slaughtered with the inhabitants of the town. And God set the whole thing.
Correct. This is really a big topic, like the idea of like bad things happen. We talked a little bit about that, I think, last year. But like, I mean, if you think about this year, we were in shul, we davened so hard on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Shemini Atzeret, and then like we're expecting all these great things to happen because of our prayers, and all of a sudden this horrible tragedy. So it's not always like equal, like what you think is going to happen. The good that you think is going to happen isn't always like, it doesn't always happen, but that there is a plan, that there is God overseeing things. we like to believe that, that's our tradition.
Yeah,
Is that hard, or does that cause questions? Yeah, but I'm not gonna answer them right now. Because that's a big topic. Well,
Who did he say this to, that carried the inhabitants of the town off?
I guess the people.
I've never understood that part.
Yeah. He used to say to other people, oh, I don't know. Maybe to others, I don't know, good question, I'm looking.
Yeah.
All right,
It could have been the students.
what?
Didn't he travel with an attendant? If he's already a rabbi, he's one of the itinerant rabbis that travel
Yeah.
around.
I don't know, it's a good question, I can look into it, I mean, the Hebrew might be different, I don't know. All right, I'm gonna skip this this is a good source also, but I'm gonna skip it because, I wanna make sure we get to some of our other sources, and if we have time, we'll get back to it. Soul departed with Echad, so we're talking about Rabbi Akiva's faith, I'll tell you what the other source is, the other source says that Rabbi Akiva saw the temple destroyed, and many were very sad about it. They saw, shualim, foxes, going, treading on this destroyed area where the temple used to be. And the rabbis were walking, were very sad. Rabbi Akiva was able to see that just as the prophecy that it was destroyed came true, he also believed that, so too the prophecy that it will be rebuilt, Jerusalem will come true as well. So he was able to see the good in the darkest moment, able to see the depth of things. So here's Rabbi Akiva's, his death. So Rabbi Akiva was taken out for execution by the Romans. It was the hour for the recital of the Shema. This is very graphic, I'm just giving you a heads up. While they combed his flesh with iron combs, he was accepting upon himself the kingship of heaven. So he had so much, his faith was so strong that even in that moment where he was, the enemy overtook him, he was still able to say Shema. And not just that, his disciples said to him, our teacher, even to this point, meaning you're even still davening right now, you're even still praying to Hashem in this moment, because all my days have been troubled by the verse with all your soul. You have to love God with all your heart, with all your possessions and all your soul, it says in the Shema. So he said, even if he takes your soul, I said, page 26, when shall I have the opportunity of fulfilling this? Now that I have the opportunity, should I not fulfill? He prolonged the word Echad until it expired while saying it. So while he was being killed, he said, Echad, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And his soul departed with Echad, with the one.
Is that why we do that?
I don't know, I don't think so.
We don't
Yeah.
have long did it.
Well, the dollar is supposed
Yeah, abrupt.
I'm not sure, because the dollar, originally that dollar,
Yeah, that we
how we
read.
pronounce it today is different than how it used to be pronounced.
Right, exactly, that's.
I have some light shed on that.
Echad, anyway, let's,
Right, no, actually, that t is actually a th.
correct,
And
that's what I was saying,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, but I'm not,
Choose still.
that's, I guess, all right, we're not gonna explain that, I think that's stupid, that's a good point, though. All right, so, happy Akiva that your soul departed with Echad, with the Erdachim. Now, what's the symbolism behind this Echad? Being able to see that God is one, that God, oneness of God can be there's one God and no other gods, or oneness of God can be like God's in everything. Being able to see that God is in everything, in the good and the bad, in the tragedies. He was able to see that. It's a very high level of faith. But Rabbi Akiva was there. Rabbi Akiva didn't start out that way. We're going to see a little bit more about his beginnings. But so far we saw Rabbi Akiva is a man of very strong faith. Okay, we're gathering information. Let's get go into this next part. Rabbi Akiva also was one of our biggest scholars. Anybody have any questions on that first part though? Or thoughts or attention? Yeah.
Why did they?
Because they were studying Torah, and they outlawed studying Torah, and the rabbis pushed back. They studied. They didn't want to give up on learning, and they executed 10 of our greatest rabbis.
For studying?
Yeah,
But not all.
not the same time. Here we go. They're different time periods,
But he was
but
also
many.
part of the rebellion.
Correct.
Yeah.
With Bar Kochel, yeah,
Yeah.
as well. Correct.
I mean, I
It
can
was
see
a-
that, but I mean, studying Torah, you're gonna.
I mean, there were a lot of there was pogrom, like they would destroy the temple. They didn't want people to resist them. They viewed our culture as something completely
They tried to get us to assimilate.
correct. I mean, the Greeks also tried to do a little bit more.
Well, they did rename Judea another name.
Right.
Yeah,
They wanted to destroy every memory of us.
yeah, I mean, it's in every generation.
Yeah, you weren't looking loud Jews back then.
We say that in the Haggadah, it's in every generation, so that was, enemies in that generation. So let's talk a little about his Torah study. So here's we talk about the Roman Empire. At one time, this is from the Gemara, the evil kingdom made a decree that the Jews could not study Torah. Okay. Papos ben Yehuda discovered Rabbi Akiva gathering congregants together and teaching Torah in public. He said, Akiva, are you not scared of the government? Rabbi Akiva replied, I will give you a parable. So what can our situation be compared? To a fox walking on the bank of a river who saw fish in the water, darting from place to place. He asked the fish. The fish is Am Yisrael, and the fox is the Romans. Why are you fleeing? The fish replied, because of the nets that people use to catch us. So the fox said, would you like to come up on the dry land? You and I will live together, just as your fathers lived with mine. Asked the fish, are you the one they call the clever animal? You're not clever, but a fool. We are afraid here where we live. How much more so would be in a place where we die? So if you ask me to leave the water, so Torah for Jews is our water. Torah and Yiddishkeit and the mitzvot, that's what sustains us throughout history. And that's our source of life, our source of blessing. So if we leave that, when we're going to be like a fish out of water, out of our habitat, and we'll die. So he says, you can ask me to come out. I might die in the water, but I'm definitely going to die out of the water because I won't have the Torah. So he said, I'm not going to stop learning Torah. That's basically what he said. He says, so does with us. We are sitting studying Torah. Is your lives and lengths of your days. So will we be if we were to get up and leave it, included Rabbi Akiva. So it would be the end of us if we left the Torah. So he didn't leave the Torah, he stayed and kept learning. He was very connected to the Torah. All right, so here is a heavy midrash connected to Rabbi Akiva. Anybody see this is this part, like some letters, how they're written in the Torah. On these letters, there's these little crowns. These little crowns. This story is connected to the crowns. Okay, we're going to see here too. This is going to bring us back to this idea that Rabbi Akiva is always going like a level deeper. Okay, this story shows it. And this is a fascinating story. You could speak about this story for a very long time. But we're not going to, but I think the story's great. I'll share a thought on it. So Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, there are at least three time traveling stories in our tradition. This is one of them. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, when Moshe went on high, so it was a situation where Moshe Rabbeinu, much earlier than Rabbi Akiva, he went into, this is the story, okay, so it might happen in a vision or whatever. Moshe Rabbeinu went to heaven, okay, and he found the Holy One, blessed be He. What was God doing in heaven? He wasn't playing video games. He was doing something else. He was attaching crowns to the Torah, those crowns that we saw, okay. So that's already interesting. Like, why is God doing it? So Moshe says, God, who's holding you back? Why can't you just give the Torah as it is? Like, why you have to add all these crowns? To give it as it is. Why you need all these crowns? Just give it normally. His answer is, there will rise a man at the end of many generations. A long time from now, a person's going to rise. Akiva, Rabbi Akiva, and he's going to learn details from every one of these crowns. They're going to teach him laws, lots and lots of laws from each one of these crowns. Okay. So Moshe said, "Whoa, that guy sounds pretty special. I didn't even know what to do with these crowns. Let me see what he's like." So he travels into the future with Hashem. Okay, Hashem takes him into the future. According to this story, is this all these details historically? They all happen historically. I don't know, but it does come to relay a message. Okay, so let me see Hashem. Let me see this guy. This guy's he teaches laws from every crown on the Torah. So Hashem goes, turn around, go backward. So Moshe. So what did Moshe do? Moshe said, Hashem said, Moshe, through a portal into the future. Moshe all of a sudden found himself in Rabbi Akiva's class. Okay, but Hashem set Rabbi Moshe not in the first row, the second row, but on the 8th row. Okay,
That last row or something.
maybe toward the back. I don't know how many rows there were. I mean, he had thousands of students. I don't know, but it wasn't in the front. And he listened to what was going on, but he couldn't understand what was happening. Moshe. He said, Rabbi, he didn't know what was going on. So, and he became deflated. It's like, I can't understand what's happening in this class. This is Moshe, he gave the Torah, okay? So, they came to a certain subject, and the disciples of Rabbi Akiva said, how do you know this? How do you know what you're teaching, Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva said, it is a law given to Moshe at Sinai. And then Moshe was comforted. That's the story. So Moshe didn't understand what was going on. Rabbi Akiva was teaching Torah. Moshe had no clue what was happening. And then they asked Rabbi Akiva, where do you get this from? I got this from Moshe. And then Moshe was like, yeah, I feel better. So what's the message in that story? What do you think? So what?
Make sure to give credit where credit is due.
Okay. But why was Moshe comforted? Why was he struggling before? Why is he comforted now? Yeah.
Because the source of everything you learn, whether it's the written Torah or the oral Torah, comes from Sinai. See that?
Correct. So that's how I understand it. Rabbi Akiva, again, this is connected to this theme of Rabbi Akiva being able to uncover something that's deeper. We saw it with bring out your image, your children of God, bring it out, and then you're able to like reveal your inner depths. Rabbi Akiva was able to like dig into Moshe's Torah and teach new things from that Torah. Because in every generation, they didn't have elevators in Moshe Rabbeinu's time. Okay, they didn't have platas on Shabbat. These are applications of Moshe's laws in our days. And so there's a lot of messages that Rabbi Akiva was teaching, and I'll give you an example. Ever chat with anybody have like Gen Z grandchildren or millennial children or grandchildren? Many times you don't know what they're talking about, right? But they know what they're talking about, right? Every generation has a different language, but if you were to translate it, you'd understand what they're saying. Meaning, like Rabbi Akiva was teaching Moshe's Torah, but he was teaching another language. Or he was teaching the depth of it. He was teaching the crowns, not just the words, the crowns. And so I think I like this story for the reason that it gives space for innovation in our tradition, right? Like we can expand on the Torah. We're supposed to. Moshe was comforted. He was comforted with the fact that this is part of my Torah. Like he wasn't saying, no, I didn't say this. It was okay. On the other hand, it has to extend from Moshe's Torah. You have two sides. But what I'm bringing this for our purposes, I want to show that Rabbi Akiva was able to dig in and bring out like the inner potential from Moshe's Torah. He really dug in and kind of was expound on even on the crowns. The story goes on, interestingly, because Moshe's like, whoa, this guy is out of this world. Why'd you give me the Torah? And when he's having this conversation, it says, Hashem says, be quiet. That's my decree. Moshe says, let me see his reward. And Hashem says, we don't know what happened to him. Moshe turned around and saw them weighing out his flesh in the marketplace. Hashem says, Moshe, this is the Torah, this is the reward. Be silent, for this is my decree. So there's a lot of depth in this whole midrash. A lot more to unpack here. One idea is that like we can't always understand the depth of what's going on. Like sometimes you need to take a step backwards and just say, I don't understand. So, but there's more depth there. But I kind of want to highlight the part of like the digging in. You're going to see why. Okay. And so Rabbi Akiva appears in so many of our halachic discussions in the Talmud. He's one of our bigger Torah expositors. Yeah. So explain. I know, but I wouldn't use that word. I did it right.
It's fine.
Okay. Okay. So now Rabbi Akiva was also a good guy. Okay, but very interesting. People don't know this story about Rabbi Akiva. He didn't start out the biggest fan of rabbis. Actually, he kind of didn't like them when he was those 40 years when he was a shepherd. He despised rabbis. Okay,
And what do we know that?
from this source. In a moment, we're gonna see it. Okay, you wouldn't have thought it, right? So let's see. This is Rabbi Akiva. It says he was a shepherd for 40 years, he studied for 40 years, he led Israel for 40 years. So he dealt with the world for 40 years. Okay, we did that already. Asak ba'olam. So like he was dealing with the world, he was a shepherd. Okay, here's this next source. So it was taught, Rabbi Akiva is on page 28. Rabbi Akiva said, when I was an ignoramus, when I was Amma Aretz, when I was somebody who didn't know the Torah, it's not pejorative. In this book of Rabbi Ari Khan, he brings another source which says Rabbi Akiva wasn't he might have even been religious. He might have been religious, he might have been following the halacha, but he just wasn't, he was not knowledgeable at all. He could have been ignoramus, he wasn't knowledgeable, doesn't mean he was like completely not religious. But when he was an ignoramus, he said, if I saw a scholar before me, I would maul him like a donkey. What does that mean, Freddie? Okay. Well, he would bite into him like a donkey. Rabbi Akiva, when he was a shepherd, he would see rabbis walking by. He wouldn't get up for them. He wouldn't give them respect. He would think, if I had the opportunity, I would bite into their flesh like a donkey would bite into the flesh of somebody that's attacking. That is intense, right? So his students he's like, chill out, Rabbi Akiva. Like, why are you saying a donkey? Why not? Why don't you just say a dog? Like a dog bites into somebody, right? So he says, no, I would not say that. The former bites and breaks the bones, while the latter bites but does not break the bones. So a donkey, it doesn't just doesn't just pierce the skin, it breaks the bone. That's how I thought about the rabbis when I was a shepherd. Right? So what do you make of that? This is very different than the Rabbi Akiva that we've seen, right? What?
He said it's a little aggressive.
A little aggressive, right? So Rabbi Akiva he was a very aggressive and strong person when it came to his learning Torah, and so perhaps it wasn't channeled at that time. So Rabbi Ari Khan says that explains that Rabbi Akiva he couldn't make sense of the fact that in his time the rabbis were not being kind to each other. Like they weren't treating each other. They were doing things for the wrong reasons. They were doing things for honor and the self-aggrandizement. So he couldn't stand that. He thought it was fake. So he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. What changed? How did he get? What led to that switch where he was able to become Rabbi Akiva? We're going to see that, okay? But there's a switch that happened. And this first 40 years, he just didn't like the rabbis. He didn't want to go around them. But eventually, we're going to see a few stories of his that the opposite was the case. He went to go comfort them and help them. Okay, so those are these stories we're going to see here. So I'm going to skip this story. I'm just going to go to this one. I'm on bottom of page 28. Rabbi Chelbo felt ill. Okay, there was a Rabbi Chelbo, was his name. He was sick, and no one came to visit him. Okay, on the bottom of page 28. So there's a rabbi that Rabbi Akiva in the past would have liked to chow down on his arm or some sort of limb. Now he's going to go visit him and comfort him. And in the previous story, he went to go only rabbi who could be sensitive enough to speak to this rabbi that they excommunicated. He's the only one. They sent him because he was the one to do it. So the sages did not enter to visit, and Rabbi Akiva entered to visit him and instructed his students to care for him. And since they sprinkled water on the dirt floor before the sixth student, he recovered. And so, what's the case? Rabbi Akiva, no one went to go visit this rabbi. Rabbi Akiva went, and he helped clean up the room, tidy up. He sprinkled water on the floor to make it like to freshen it up. That brought that sick person back to life. Some say that Rabbi Akiva's presence led those around him to clean up, like just him being there. It says either he swept or others swept. Just him being there enabled those to help out. So that's also an important lesson. Like sometimes just going to visit people who are sick in like the hospital, or if the doctors and nurses know that the people are around a lot, it causes them to sometimes be a little bit more attentive. So that's maybe what Rabbi Akiva was doing as well. So the student said, Rabbi Akiva, you revived me. I mean, it's the opposite of biting down. You revived him. Rabbi Akiva went out and taught with regard to anyone who does not visit ill as though they're spilling blood, meaning somebody can be without life until you come and visit them and give them a good word. Okay, so we're seeing Rabbi Akiva flipped here. Now he's reviving. So how do we get to that? So here is what I think one of the sources of what led to this flip in Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so far I'm just summarizing. So far we have a rabbi of deep faith, even till his last moment. We have a great rabbi in Torah, a rabbi who's a very deep learner. He can get to the depths of the Torah, learn out laws from the crowns. Even knows what Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know. Okay, and he's also a sensitive rabbi, although he didn't start out like that in relation to the other rabbis. Okay, so how did he get from that place to the other? This is the story of Rachel and Rabbi Akiva. That's Rabbi Akiva's wife, Rachel. okay? It doesn't appear, her name doesn't appear in here, I think, but our tradition tells us it's Rachel. Okay, so this is the story of how Rachel basically helped Rabbi Akiva become Rabbi Akiva. Okay, we had that story where he was by the water and he saw it dripping. But we're going to see that this is like interconnected with that story. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva was a shepherd at the time, and anybody like to watch like those America's Got Talent, The Voice type shows? So this is kind of like a talent discovery here. She discovers Rabbi Akiva. She made Rabbi Akiva, his wife. She made him who he was. She discovered him. Nobody saw who he was. She saw the depths of who he was. She discovered him. Right? So he was a shepherd of this person called Kaba ben Savua, right?
Is it Kalba ben Savua? or
Yeah, it
Kalba?
should be Kaba. I'm not sure why it's like it's changed there. Maybe it's in Kaba Savua. Anyway,
Well, he wasn't a nice guy, so it could be.
yeah. So anyway, he was very rich. He was a very wealthy person. Okay. Now, it was his daughter was Rachel, and she was watching Rabbi Akiva, and she saw this guy is nice, he's sensitive. Maybe it's the niceness that didn't allow him to connect to the other rabbis. It's like, that's not the type of life I want. He was gentle, he was kind, he was nice. She saw there's something special about this guy, and she goes to him. She saw perhaps if he learned Torah, he could become something special. She goes, if I were betrothed to you, would you go away to study at an academy? She told him, she goes, if I got married, I got betrothed to you, would you go and learn, become something special in Torah? He goes, yes. So they went and they got married. Now her father, the wealthy Ben Sabua, he didn't like this idea because he wanted him to go marry some real estate tycoon or some doctor or lawyer or something. Why are you marrying the shepherd? Yeah. So he said, if you get married, if you guys continue with this, I'm going to disinherit you, and disconnect you from all my fortune. So what did she do? She said, okay, that's the chance I'm gonna have to take to stick with this man. Okay, so when her father heard what she had done, he drove from his house and forbade her by a vow, meaning a vow is very serious.
Right.
In a strong vow, you cannot have any benefit from my estate. Remember this from Daf Yomi, the vows is a serious thing, right? Okay, so what happened? This is from another Gemara, but I put them all together. So they went to a hotel room and they went in the suite. No, they didn't. They didn't have any money. What did they do? They slept on straw. They went and slept on straw in a barn, and he had to pick out straw from their hair. And he said he said a romantic statement to her in that moment in the barn. He says, "If only I could afford it, I would present you with a golden tiara." Jerusalem was like Jerusalem Zahav. That says Jerusalem Zahav. It was like a tiara, which I guess a picture of Jerusalem. Like, I'm picking hay out of your hair right now. Maybe Hashem will bless us one day where I'll be able to give you what you really deserve. Okay. So later, Eliyahu and Avi came in the guise of a mortal. So right when they thought that things couldn't get worse, they're on the ground, on the hay and the hair. All of a sudden, Eliyahu and Avi comes by and says, "Give me some straw." He appeared as a person. "My wife is in confinement. I have nothing for her to lie on." Rabbi Akiva observed to his wife, says, "There's a man who lacks even straw." And so I guess they brought him the straw. And eventually she goes, "Okay, stop with all this stuff. Go learn already. Get out of here. Go learn." Okay, so Rabbi Akiva went. So he went to yeshiva. Okay, now I think that story. Some say this as well. Other scholars. That story with the water, and he's sitting by the brook. That could have happened at this moment. Imagine Rabbi Akiva. She goes, "Go become a rabbi." Okay. So now he's like, "Whoa, okay, she want to get married to me." She's pushing me. I don't know if I can do it. I don't even know Aleph Bet. So maybe at this point he sat by the brook. He's like, "I can't do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it." And then he looked at the water dripping onto those stones. He said, "If it can change the stone, I can be changed as well. I'm going to go study." And then he went and learned Aleph Bet. I think because it says it happened in the beginning of his studying period, is the period when he started studying. So that perhaps happened here. He went to the yeshiva. He went there for 12 years. Okay. Went there for 12 years. Now, did he come back home in between? Perhaps. It's not clear. Like, it seems from the text here that like he was just there for 12 years. But he does have he didn't have kids. Okay, so it could have been that he came back from time to time. I don't know. But when he came home 12 years later, he came back with 12,000 disciples. Not bad, huh? Yeah, I'm here 7 years, huh? Seven.
I have a question, because in the beginning, the earlier, it says that he will go study, at least one section of Torah, he went to the schoolhouse, and he and his son. Now, this is.
Correct.
So is that actually his son?
Yeah,
Or is
yeah.
that a metaphorical?
No, it's so I looked at it. Some say it was his son, some say it was like it was his son from
So
his
maybe
man.
he did go back and forth during those.
So that's what I'm saying. It could be. It's difficult to say that he was there for 12 straight years. They didn't see each other. They didn't even text or anything like that. I don't know. But I don't know.
These stories aren't written to the historical accuracy.
So let's see what happens. So when he returned, he came home with 12,000 disciples. So I imagine this story going like this. He's here, he has all these disciples, comes with all these disciples with him, right? And when he got home, he heard an old man saying to his wife, "How long will you lead this life of a living widowhood? How long are you gonna live without this guy? He's ditching you, he's out learning Torah all day, well, you're selling your braids to support him." She was doing what she could to support him while he was studying. There are some accounts that he used to cut wood, sell the wood, and make money from that. So maybe he worked a little bit. It's not clear exactly how the finances work, but she said if he would listen to me, he would spend another 12 years. Okay, immediately. Rabbi Akiva didn't even stop inside the house. He ran back to yeshiva with all of his students. That's how you could picture perhaps the story. But or he stopped in and they had a chat, and she said, "I still want you to keep growing. You have more potential in you to even raise up another 12,000 students." She saw his potential, she kept pushing him, right? So when he finally returned, he brought with him 24,000 students 12 years later. So his wife heard of his arrival and went out to meet him. Okay, when her neighbor said, "Borrow some respectable clothes and put them on. You're going out in your rags. You're running out to go see him." And she says, "A righteous man knows the life of his beast." Okay, that's an intense statement, but basically, like he knows who I am. He knows what I am. That's how I understand that. It's a verse. Yodea Tzadik Nefesh Bento. Like that's a verse. Okay, on approaching him, so immediately he's there with a lot of students. We're gonna say 24,000. A lot of students. It's been 24 years. They haven't seen each other, and she goes, "Rabbi Akiva, I missed you so much." She starts kissing his feet. Now nobody knows about what she looks like. They don't know who she is. Some random woman kissing his feet. So students like immediately try to stop her. Attendants, we're about to thrust her aside. Rabbi Akiva guides them, "Leave her alone. Mine and yours are hers." All that we have, all of our 24,000 students here, all the Torah we have are because of her. Leave her alone, because we have what we have due to her actions and her help and her assistance and her prodding me all this time to learn and become a scholar. So the story goes, her father, who made a vow that she couldn't benefit from his estate. So he heard that a great man came to town, and so maybe he'll go and invalidate my vow. Meaning, he heard that Rabbi Akiva happened to be that was the one she got married to, and now he's rich. He's got 24,000 students. Now he's open to him being his son-in-law, right? So he's like, I got to get rid of this vow so she can benefit from my estate, and then I can also benefit, from my relationship with them. I got to get rid of this vow. So he heard a big rabbi came to town. He didn't put it together. That was Rabbi Akiva. So he goes, when he came to Rabbi Akiva, he says, "Would you have made your vow if you had known that he was a great man?" He's talking about Rabbi Akiva. "Would you have made this vow if you knew that this person that you're saying that you're going to get married to, he was going to become a great man?" He's giving a way out of the vow. So she said, even one chapter, even one single halacha, I would not have made the vow. He then said to him, "I am the man." Like you can imagine, like if this was like a movie or something, like a very some music would come in right now, some dramatic music. "I am the man that you disinherited. I'm the man that you distanced, and now I'm back, and it's like kind of like a Yosef energy a little bit. The other fell upon his face and kissed his feet and gave him half of his wealth. Okay, so it says the majority of Rabbi Akiva acted in a similar way later on, but we see here that that this idea that let's put this all together. So Rabbi Akiva was a person who was able to see the depths. When he was a shepherd, he didn't see the depths per se. You couldn't see the depths of the rabbis. Enter Rachel. Rachel. She encouraged him to see his own potential, to maximize his own potential. She encouraged him to become who he was. He wanted to give up after in the beginning. She pushed him. He wanted to go up with 12,000. She said, go back to Yeshiva. She kept pushing him to become something that she knew he could be. And that's the idea of bring out your inner potential. Perhaps that influenced Rabbi Akiva. He had it always inside of him. Perhaps she helped bring it out. She modeled for him that. And that's how he became, perhaps, in some ways, this very deep thinker. He was able to get to the depths of things. He was the one who was able to get into Moshe's Torah and teach those details from the crowns of the Torah. He was the one who was able to get to the depths of the philosophical discussions and really and have very deep faith in God and see God as one, even when he was struggling. To see that God is there even when all hope was lost and he was in the woods. And she modeled for him this seeing things on a deep level, and she helped him bring it out. And then he, perhaps that was always inside of him, but she modeled it for him. Perhaps she helped him, as he said, what's mine is hers. So it's very beautiful, I think it's a beautiful story, beautiful message. This idea that we talked about with Elisha ben Avuya, if you remember, they did not succeed in bringing him back. Remember, if you remember that story, but she did succeed, and she saw his potential. So that's how the story ends. So you need a happy ending. Here it is. Remember the Jerusalem of gold, the tiara. It happened that Rabbi Akiva prepared a city of gold for his wife. The wife of Rabban Gamliel saw her, and she was like, "Whoa, I want one of those. That's so beautiful." And so he was like, she said that to her husband. So Rabban Gamliel said, would you have done what she did for him? She sold the braids of her hair and gave it to him while he labored in Torah. Meaning, like, she put out all this energy to help him become who she was. She deserves to be crowned. Right? You could see it that way. And so finally, the last statement I bring here is that the rabbi said, who is wealthy? Rabbi Meir said, who has pleasure in their wealth. That's an interesting statement. Rabbi Tarfon says, whoever possesses 100 vineyards. You're wealthy if you have a lot of vineyards. Right? Nothing deep. And 100 slave servants. Rabbi Akiva said, he who has a wife good in deeds, right? He viewed himself as wealthy, as lucky to have her. So all these statements seem to like interconnect in a beautiful way. And so I think that's the message of the story. I named it Rabbi Akiva's moral development. Let me see the title here. Rabbi Akiva's moral development. What's mine is hers. That's the statement. So Rabbi Akiva became the person who was due to her. The message is to try to get to the deeper level of things. Sometimes you can do it on your own. Sometimes you need help from others to do it. If you see somebody who has potential, encourage them to try to bring it out and to become the best person that they could be. So I really like this story, and I feel like it's also often overlooked. We're always talking about Rabbi Akiva, but we could also be talking about Rachel and her strong influence on him and her belief in him, helping him become who he is. All right, thanks. All right. Do you want to hang out a little bit for a few minutes? Questions or thoughts? Yeah.
Do we know why he was so angry at the rabbinic?
So Ari Khan said, why was he so angry? He says it's connected to this. Like he says it's connected to the fact that he couldn't make sense of how they're not ethical. He had a very strong sense of morality, and he was a very kind and sensitive guy, as she said. And when he saw the rabbis cheating, rabbis at that time saw there was some corruption, and he saw that they were being boastful and arrogant. He says, "I don't want any part of that." That's how he.